Hey guys, Zeechin here, and this is the UHANS S1. It is very well made and has a premium look and feel, but it's clearly inspired by the iPhone 5. It has some real decent specs, 3GB of RAM, 32GB of storage, the MTK Octacore processor, and an IMX214 Sony sensor for the camera. It also runs the latest Android 6.0, but it has a custom skin on top of it called FreeMeOS, and I'm a little bit apprehensive about any custom skin on top of Android, because they're usually not as good as stock Android, so let's see how this phone does. This is one of the smallest 5-inch phones I've tested to date. The Realme Throw and Redmi 3 are small phones as well, but this one is actually thinner. A colleague of mine really liked how it felt. He said the heft gave it a real premium feel. It's an absolute pleasure to hold and use, as the metal bezel gives you a real decent grip. The glass on the back and the front curve towards the bezel, but be very careful because the glass is fragile and it almost covers the entire phone. You have the notification light on the top. There's a black bar around the screen that makes the phone bigger than it needs to be. I don't quite like that, but the glass also curves nicely away from the screen, and honestly, apart from the black bars, it looks pretty good. The metal band running around the phone does remind me strongly of the iPhone 5, but that's not a knock on the device. It actually looks pretty good. The color of said metal bezel is close to rose gold, but it's a shade darker and closer to brass instead, but it still looks great. On the right side you have the volume and power buttons, and on the left you have the SIM tray. The speaker is on the bottom. The back is also glass, and the glass on the back also curves nicely into the bezel. There is the good fingerprint sensor on the back, camera, and the flash. Again, the phone feels really good to hold in the hand, and I like it a lot. However, there are two things I want to mention. First, my unit came with some scratches and marks on the bezel. Hopefully your phone does not come with that. Second, the fingerprint sensor can wiggle around when you touch it, so it seems the tolerances just are not as good in that regard. As you could probably tell, I really like the build on this phone. It's extremely well made and very compact. Apart from the two things I mentioned before, the scratches and the loose sensor, the phone has a real good build quality. The only downside is how fragile it is because it's glass on the front and the back. The 5-inch display has a 720p resolution, and while it's not 1080p, it still looks good. Colors are fairly decent, but it still lacks the punch of an AMOLED screen. It goes up to about 500 nits of brightness, and combined with the Oncell display, it's very easy to use outside as there are minimal reflections. UHANS also used Gorilla Glass, and it's pretty tough. I didn't use knives and stuff to scratch it, but keys couldn't do anything to the screen. I don't really have any complaints about the screen at all. I'm pretty satisfied with it. You have one downward firing speaker, and volume-wise it's pretty average. When you turn on the volume booster in the settings, it gets pretty loud. One downside of turning the setting on is that the audio usually gets distorted, but I didn't hear any of the distortion at all, so you can leave this on. Audio quality is actually not bad. There is enough bass, but not a lot, but enough. Mids and highs are pretty clear as well, so listen for yourself.
Turn around, mister. Miss your hands. Slowly. Aggravated assault is a felony in this state, Mr. Reacher. Process him and get him to county.
Two things are going to happen in the next 90 seconds.
Excuse me?
First, that phone over there is going to ring. Second, you're going to be wearing these cuffs on your way to prison.
Well, that is one magnificent prophecy, Mr. Reacher.
So let's talk about the elephant in the room, the battery life. So the battery life has me the most worried, since it's a tiny 2100 mAh battery, or 2200 mAh battery, which was probably necessary to make the phone this thin. So let's see how it does. In the web browsing test, it lasted for 4 hours and 31 minutes, and 5 hours and 30 minutes for video playback. I was expecting something much worse than this, so this is a nice surprise, but it is by no means good results. In real life usage, I was able to get a maximum of 3 hours of screen on time with 16 hours of standby. I was using Chrome, reading news and Reddit, mail, and some messaging. I was playing about 2 hours of podcast through Bluetooth as well. As an extra heavy user, this is definitely not enough for me. I'm used to my Redmi 3 having the screen on for the entire day, if I wanted to. If you are a light user, you'll be fine. Medium users, you might be able to scrape by for a day, and heavy users will definitely need a charger. So if battery life was the elephant in the room, then software is the smaller elephant in the room. In this case, a custom skin. Custom skins are usually not as clean or as aesthetically pleasing to me as stock Android, with HTC Sense being one notable exception, of course. So let's see whether FreeMeOS is a good or bad skin. This is running Android 6.0 Marshmallow, and to summarize, performance and features are mostly good for FreeMeOS, but aesthetics, in my opinion, I do not like. It's cartoony, which I'm not a fan of. Swiping, opening, and closing apps are all fast and zippy, but aesthetics though are really not my thing. The good thing is that FreeMeOS's aesthetics reach as far as the launcher and stops there, so replacing it with Google Now Launcher and the phone looks much closer to stock. The fingerprint sensor is a mixed bag. On one hand, it's not as fast as the Nexus 6P or even the Yumi Super, but man, is it top-notch accurate. Since I got the phone, it's rejected my finger probably 4 times in total, and I got the phone about a week and a half ago. Not many phones can claim that. There's also the notification light that has 3 main colors, but there isn't any built-in software to customize it. You have to download Lightflow or Light Manager for that. There are also off-screen gestures for those who want it. With 3 gigs RAM and an octa-core processor, multitasking is great. Not as good as my recent Yumi Super, which had 4 gigs of RAM, but still great. I could open and close apps in a flash, and I maxed out memory once while I was running multiple games at once. The phone does get warm easily, even doing basic things like web browsing, but the weird thing is the phone never really gets hot, even when gaming. That has me a little puzzled. I could play intense games like Marvel's Future Fight easily, and other games like Hearthstone, no problem. I ran a 2.2 as well and got a score of about 48,000. You get quad-band GSM, WCDMA, and LTE, but do check www.willmyphonework.net to make sure it works on your carrier. Reception was actually pretty good, and I got mostly 4G with the occasional drop to 3G. I ran speed tests on 4G and got some pretty good speeds, but nothing spectacular. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth both work fine, and GPS reception is decent, but nothing special. To be honest, I wasn't expecting much from this camera, as no camera has impressed me so far that I've tested. The best Chinese camera I've used is the old but venerable THL 5000, coming in at a close second the Redmi 3. Well, this camera might be number 1 in good lighting conditions anyway. This was the very first picture I snapped while testing the camera. No setup, just open the camera app and shoot. It's pretty impressive, eh? Then the second picture, and this is the third. The camera captures some pretty vivid and clear scenes in good lighting conditions. After almost filling up the phone with pics of my dog, and I won't show all of them here, I took some shots in cloudy conditions, and colors are still good, but not as good as in sunlight. Low light shooting though is pretty average, there's nothing special about it. The video camera is not bad, it takes some pretty colorful video, clarity is up there as well, but it failed to impress me the way the camera did. The front-facing camera is just about average as well. I can say with confidence that this is one of the best cameras I've tested so far in daylight conditions. As lighting conditions get less ideal, quality obviously goes down. The video camera is also pretty good, but then again it did not impress me as much as the daylight shots. So what does the UHANS S1 have going for it? Well, almost everything, keyword being almost. It's great build quality, it looks nice, it has a good screen, loud speakers, great performance, and a good camera. But before you hit buy, let me tell you the not so good parts of this phone. There is one major weak point and a few other small ones. So the first major weak point, the battery. Light and medium users should be fine, but heavy users will need to charge before the end of the day. A couple of other small things, there isn't any built-in way to modify the notification light, and the screen brightness doesn't get very dim. Overall though, UHANS has created a very compelling phone. Apart from the battery, you won't be disappointed in any other aspect of this device. Again, do consider the price. At $160, it's definitely on the expensive side, but if you can get that down lower, then definitely consider it. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to hit like and subscribe. Thanks.